Hi there, Sam Moser here. This video is going to be a detailed breakdown about what it costs to build out my camper van. I think this is the most common question I get about the project, and it's a good question. When I was first starting to plan all this out, one of the very first things I did was try to come up with a realistic estimate and budget for what it was going to cost. Once I got to building and purchasing materials, I kept track of every single item I bought in one long spreadsheet, and then to prepare for this video, I went through and I categorized all those items into categories that made logical sense to me. So what I'll do now is run through those and then we'll tally it all up at the end. One thing I want to point out too going into this though, is that this is just the cost for the materials themselves, and it doesn't include any labor, as I did all the labor of building out the van myself. Okay, so the first category I have here is climate control. So what I've included in this one is my roof vent fan plus a couple other smaller fans I have, then the insulation in the walls and the floor. After this, we have my heater, which is the Propex HS2000. And then the other things I have here are just all the other odds and ends around installing all these items. The total for this category came out to $2,366. Okay, next up, the electrical system. And let me say that all these categories aren't really in any particular order. So the electrical system, I've done a detailed video on that, but that includes the battery, all the charge controllers, the solar panels up on the roof, all the wiring, and all the other components around that. The total for this category was $2,806. All right, next up, the propane system. So this includes the tank, the regulator, all of the tubing and piping and connectors and adapters to then get the propane to my two propane appliances. So the total for this category was $478. After this, we have the water system. And the water system is the tank, the pumps. I included the faucets, the water filters, the gray water components, everything in that whole video I did on the water system. The total for this category is $784. Okay, so next up we have the roof rack on top of the van, and the primary purpose of the roof rack is to provide an easy way to mount the solar panels. I built my roof rack out of 80/20 aluminum extrusion, and the total cost for that came out to $637. After this, I have the lighting. And I didn't know what else to categorize this, so I just made it its own category. So I have in total 8 of these recessed LED lights. Then I have an LED strip light under the bed for lighting up the garage area. Then we have a couple reading lights, and then the switches and dimmers. So the total for this came to $154. Okay, so the next item on the list here is the kitchen appliances. And I actually only counted 2 things in this category, and that's my 12-volt Dometic fridge and my 2-burner propane stovetop. The kitchen sink and faucet kind of seems like it would also go in this category, but I grouped those with the water system. So for those 2 items I just mentioned, the cost was $1,302. Next up, we have bathroom. And this one actually is just one item because I only have one thing that seemed to specifically count towards this, and that's my Nature's Head composting toilet, and that cost $960. Okay, so next up, we get into more of the building material specific categories, and we'll start with the flooring. So for my flooring, I used vinyl sheet flooring, and there's a special adhesive that you need to use with that. And then I also included with this all of the trim I used around the edges of the flooring. The total for this category was $182.86. Now, a couple other bits that went into the construction of the floor would be the foam insulation below, and that I counted in the insulation category, and then the plywood subfloor, and that gets counted in this next category, which is all of the plywood and lumber that went into the build. And my total for that category is $1,099. Now, I basically built everything with plywood, and primarily that was 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood for most of the structure, then 1/4-inch Baltic birch for the wall paneling and ceiling paneling, and then I bought this butcher block. This is a maple butcher block, which I used for the countertops as well as this table. Moving on, we have the screws and bolts. So there's tons of little screws in all the wall paneling. There's pocket hole screws and a lot of the joinery on the cabinets. And then there's big 1/4-20 stainless steel bolts that hold the wall framing into the metal structure of the van itself. So the total for this category is $261. Next up, we have all the other hardware. And for this, what I mean by hardware here, since we already said screws and bolts, this is things like the cabinet locks, the cabinet hinges, gas struts, all of the drawer slides. There's a big heavy-duty set of drawer slides in the back. There's other little latches and locks on all the cabinet doors. And the total for this category was $556. Next up, paints and finishes. This one's pretty straightforward. I spent $204 here. After this, we have all the adhesives and sealants. So the wood glue, the caulking, the exterior sealants to keep things from leaking on the roof. In total there, I spent $218. Next up, we have consumables. So by this, I mean things that you use during the build, but that are basically one-time use and are not a final product in the van. So that's sandpaper, paint rollers, and things of that nature. And the total there was $58. Next up, we have furnishings. So these were just kind of some of the odds and ends things I bought for around the van. Curtain rods, towel holders, little hooks. Not a whole lot because most of the things in here are built in, but I spent $186. Okay, next category I have here, and this one's a little bit of a catch-all, is just accessories. And a lot of these are things that aren't core to the build itself, but accessories that are really handy to have in your van when you're traveling. All right, so looking at the items in this category, we have the cell phone signal booster, and that's quite pricey. That actually counts for about half of the total cost of this category. We have the fire extinguisher. We have some other vehicle-specific items just to keep us a little more self-sufficient on the road. So we have traction recovery boards to help if we ever get stuck. We have a air compressor that can be used to refill the tires if they're low, or if we have to deflate them for traction on dirt roads. We have some little odds and ends like the cell phone mount we have for up in the front of the van, the sunshade, and I also included in this the ladder we carry so we can get up and clean the solar panels, as well as a window squeegee and a couple other small odds and ends. The total for this category was $1,100. After this, I have a miscellaneous category. I'm not going to go through this. These were just random bits that I bought that I didn't know where else to categorize, and that was $325. When you're planning out a budget for a build like this, you always have to include some sort of buffer in there for all the things you're not going to think of. After this, I have tools, and by tools, there's kind of a big asterisk with this one. Because, I had a full workshop full of all like my woodworking and carpentry tools, so I'm not talking about any of those. This is just the very task-specific tools I bought specifically for systems I was building out in the van. So a lot of these were special tools for the electrical system, or, the flaring tool for the propane connections, things like that. And the total there was $425. That's basically it. I have one more category I want to mention, which is vehicle upgrades, and then after that I'll talk about what I paid for the van itself. Now for vehicle upgrades, we have two main things that make up the bulk of this category. The first of those is the window. This is a window I added myself that didn't come with the van. The second thing I have here is an alarm system for the van, and this is the only item that wasn't installed by me. I had a professional car accessory upfitter do that part. The total for this category was $1,471. Okay, so now that covers everything that went into this van conversion. And tallying all that up, we get a total of $15,583. At the end of the day, the total cost for the materials for van conversion is really going to depend on what features you put in it and the quality of materials you buy. It's possible to do an economical, low-budget build and spend a lot less than this, and it's also possible to go all out and spend way more than this. Okay, so the last thing I want to look at is the price I paid for the van itself, because I think that's interesting to look at alongside the total conversion cost. My van is the 2016 Ford Transit. It has the 148-inch wheelbase and the high roof. It's the regular body length, not the extended body length Transit. I bought my van used at the end of 2018, and I bought it from a private party I found on Craigslist, not through a dealership. At the time of purchase, the van had about 49,000 miles on it, and I paid the seller $24,000 for the vehicle. Alongside this, I also paid for a pre-purchase inspection from a mechanic, and then there were all the tax and titling fees. In total, this cost $25,655. Alright, so that's all I have for this video. I hope this was useful and insightful for anyone else trying to put an estimate or budget together for their van conversion. Check out my other videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye.